Well, welcome and thanks for joining our first YCCA event on climate action. My name is Lily Lee, a resident at the Manhattan Place, and I'm thrilled to be your MC for this evening. Let's start with a land acknowledgement before we begin. Paul?
Yes. The land we're standing on today is the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse nations, the Inuit and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. Like climate action, it's only the first step to say these words. We have to take every opportunity to turn these words into action. And one of the actions can be as simple as picking up a book. This one is by Michelle Good, and there's only one sentence here that I want to share with you to begin with. One thing I will say about Indigenous peoples is we have mastered the art of maintaining hope. I think that's something we are going to need to keep in mind when we start on our climate action journey. Thank you, Lily.
Thank you, Paul. Now I need to share some housekeeping rules. This webcast is being recorded. Please respect each other and listen with an open mind. I will introduce each speaker and there will be a mini Q&A at the end of each section, plus a formal Q&A with all the panelists at the end. But do put down your questions in the Zoom chat as you think of them during the presentations. Our objectives for this evening aim to help us to be more aware of the extent of the climate crisis and to provide us with some actions that we can take to make a difference at the personal level, at the condo level, and advocating or lobbying our elected representatives. First, I'd like to call upon Ray Nakano, who retired from IT with the Ontario government and has been very active in raising awareness for our climate crisis. He volunteers with Climate Fast, a Toronto-based environmental organization, and maintains 2 climate-related websites that we have shared with you in our flyers. Over to you, Ray.
Thank you, Lily, for the introduction. I'm going to talk about climate change in general to start with, and then I'll talk about what actions you can take at the personal level. So the first thing I wanted to say is talk like a human. So what's the reason for this? What a lot of environmentalists have recognized is that we tend to fall into what we call climate science speak, and it tends to lose people. So the average person may not understand what 1.5 is or what decarbonization means, that type of thing. So I'm going to endeavor to talk like a human. And if at any time I slip into what we call climate science speak, just let me know. And I apologize in advance if I do that. So I'm going to start off with a video. And this is about the greenhouse effect. And I'll just ask Mark, I guess I'll stop my share so you can run that video for us. So this video is actually produced by NASA, and it's a very short video. And the greenhouse effect. So sunlight reaches the Earth, and some of it's reflected, particularly in the ice caps where it's white ice. But a lot of it is reabsorbed into the atmosphere, and that's what we call the greenhouse effect. And it just tends to warm up the atmosphere. And that's basically what happens. And I think that's the end of that video. So let me just go back to my screen. Right. So there's 2 greenhouse gases that we're concerned about. One is carbon dioxide, and the other is methane. And carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, that is from burning anything, lasts for hundreds of years. So you cannot easily get rid of it. Methane, on the other hand, is actually lasts for about 8 to 10 years, but it has a more intense greenhouse effect. So As I mentioned, CO2 is primarily produced from burning fossil fuels. Whenever you're burning, you have a gasoline-powered car, you have a barbecue, you have a gas-range stove, that's producing carbon dioxide. Methane is a little bit more obscure. It's produced when we extract fossil fuels from the ground, from leaking oil wells. Cattle produce methane gas. Food waste, when it's rotting, produces methane gas. And now with the Arctic warming up, the permafrost is actually producing methane gas as well. To my next slide. So this shouldn't really be news to people, but the climate crisis is here. We just experienced the hottest July, August, September, October, November, December, January, and I expect February will be the same thing. These have been the hottest months in Canada and in the world. 2023 was declared the hottest year ever in the last 100,000 years. Last year, Canada had its worst wildfire season. An area twice the size of Portugal burned down. We had smoke from our wildfires spread into the United States and even over into Europe. People are dying, losing their homes and their livelihoods from extreme weather events around the world right now. These are some of the headlines concerning our current situation. We've had messages from the Pope, from other faith leaders. We've had messages from the United Nations. And the United Nations declared a code red in terms of the climate. And these were some of the newspaper headlines around the world. And in Canada, it really wasn't, I think I saw an article on the front page of the Star, I think in the Globe it was buried, page 2 or page 3. The Lancet, which is a medical journal for doctors around the world, declared a code red for a healthy future. And this brings me to our next video. So this video is about 3 minutes long, and it shows you some of the people that were affected by the climate crisis in 2023. It's actually produced by The Guardian, which is an excellent United Kingdom news media organization, and they've been reporting on the climate crisis for years. I subscribe to it, and a warning, some of the images in this video may be disturbing. So I'll stop my share and let Mark show us the video.
If we are not respecting the environment, then nature will take our own lives, right? We have example today.
There were bodies on the ground. It was horrifying.
It's getting into the 50 Celsius. I don't know how this is humanly possible to function.
Landslides and flash floods in India's northern state of Himachal Pradesh.
We lost many lives, we lost many houses. People were worshipping in the temple, went to pray to God to save themselves from the rain. And suddenly the flood came, and every single person who was present in that moment of prayer is struck.
Wildfires on the island of Maui. The inferno burnt most of the historic town of Lahaina to the ground. Hundreds of people remain unaccounted for.
My parents lost their home that my grandparents built. It's gone, it's been burnt to the ground. My family member, Brian, he got an alert on his phone saying that you need to evacuate. And he said that he heard explosions, and it still feels so surreal. Like, is this really happening? Is everything really gone?
Beijing experienced its heaviest rainfall in 140 years. At least 20 people have died in eastern provinces.
So a relative of mine, she lives in Zhuozhou, south of Beijing. It would have been midnight in China. I first saw a message with absolutely no warning saying the water is in the basement, it's coming up, there's no light, electricity's been cut. I was extremely worried. So we were sent pictures of submerged ground floor flats. We were getting kind of drib-drab information saying we're basically putting sandbags out we don't know what's going to happen tonight because we can't see anything. There was no electricity, so their phone could die at any moment. It was touch and go. The gushing water, it's like a river. And, you know, anybody who would have been caught in that would have just been carried away.
In Palestine, the heat waves that we faced this summer, absolutely crippling. It's getting into the 50 Celsius. In some countries in the Arab region, you cannot function whatsoever. Water supply is intermittent, even in the major cities. It only arrives 2 days a week. The most immediate thing that I'm seeing right now is that people are really facing difficulty in their daily work. I found that my house is not suitable anymore in the summertime. I don't know how this is humanly possible to function in these kind of temperatures. There's a sense of hopelessness as well. It's really in the hands of government, developing nations and the global north, you know, not taking responsibility for its historical responsibility for the climate crisis.
So in Canada, closer to home, here are some of the extreme weather events that have been taking place. We had a heat dome in British Columbia in 2021, if you remember, and that killed over 600 people, mostly seniors. I've got some pictures here of Lytton, which reported the highest temperature in Canada at the time, and then next day the city burned down. Abbotsford, where there was very severe flooding, here a tornado in Ottawa, and just the fires that were taking place, actually all across Canada, but this is a fire in the Maritimes. So, and there was also Hurricane Fiona, which affected parts of the Maritimes as well. So our climate crisis is getting worse, and our climate is not stabilizing because we keep increasing the carbon dioxide in our atmosphere. So the frequency, intensity, and impact of extreme weather events all around the world and in Canada is going to increase and get worse. Right now, if things stay the same, we are headed for at least a 3 degree temperature increase. And it won't stop there. It'll continue to rise unless we start doing something about it. And when I say start doing something, taking action, and both at a personal level, and Paul will talk about at the condo level, but also at the government level. And that's where Judith will be talking about advocacy with our elected representatives. Right now, all of the current extreme weather events that are taking place are caused by a 1.2 degree global average temperature increase. So if you can imagine what a 3 degree temperature increase would look like, it's going to be very, very bad. And these are some headlines talking about the potential for getting to the hellish 3 degree temperature increase. So why do I do this work? This is why. I have a grandson, Gibson's 11. Scarlett will be turning 8 at the end of this month. So think about your kids. Think about your grandkids, your nieces or nephews, and what they'll be faced with unless we do something about our climate crisis. So we need to preserve our planet for ourselves, our children, our grandchildren, and all future generations. If your child or grandchild was in a burning house, wouldn't you do whatever you could to try to save them? Of course you would. And that's why we have to do something about our climate crisis. That's why it's so important. So I'm going to talk next about what we can do to make a difference. So the first thing is just talking about our climate crisis. Talk about it with your family, your friends, your neighbors, co-workers, community members, because unless we talk about it, why would we do anything about it? So this is a short video, my last video actually, and this is Katharine Hayhoe, and she's a Canadian, and she's a scientist who was named a United Nations Champion of the Earth in 2019. So she actually spoke at a Earth Day webcast that Climate Fast, the organization that I volunteer with, we put this webcast on, and it was at the start of the pandemic. So I'll pass things over to Mark.
Thank you for having me. It is great to be able to talk with you. Why does climate change matter to us? We often think, well, we're such a northern country, right? Wouldn't a little warmer weather be better? We think as we scrape the ice off our cars in February. But the reality is, even in Canada, we are perfectly adapted to the climate that we have. And although there's no number, if we manage to keep warming below 2 degrees, it doesn't mean that we're 100% okay. We already have things like Lyme disease spreading through Ontario, carried by ticks, that we didn't used to have because our winters were cold enough to keep them at bay. We have wildfire burning greater and greater area out west. We have increased risk of heat waves in the summer and heavy downpours and floods. 2 degrees is not a magic number, but the faster we cut our carbon emissions, the better off we are all going to be, because climate change matters to us all. And since you're online, I want to show you that we actually have a Global Weirding episode on how climate change is affecting Canada. We have a Global Weirding episode about what does 2 degrees really mean and why is it so important to avoid the most serious and dangerous impacts of climate change. And lastly, I have a TED Talk on the most important thing that every individual can do about climate change. And you might be saying, well, Catherine, I'm sure there's TED Talks on changing light bulbs and recycling and electric cars and vegan diets. There are, but there wasn't a TED Talk on this. The most important thing we can do about climate change is talk about it. Why? Because if we don't talk about it, why would we care? And if we don't care, why would we act? So having positive, constructive conversations, using our voices to advocate for change in our schools, our place of work, our organizations, communities, and beyond, that is the most important thing that every single one of us can do to help fix our changing climate. Thank you.
So this is a new program that just started up a couple of months ago, and it's called The Week. And it was organized by a couple of very concerned individuals. And what they put together is a series of videos, actually three videos, that talk about the problem, what the solutions are, and then what you can do about it. So I've actually attended a couple of these sessions, and it's a very good program. So it actually provides you with a lot of information, but it actually inspires you and really it's very uplifting. So if it's something that you're interested in, maybe you can let Lily or Paul, anyone else who is involved in this webcast, and we can perhaps organize a showing of The Week. So next, number two. Number 2 is pretty clear. Stop burning fossil fuels. So if we want to reduce the amount of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere, we need to stop producing fossil fuels and stop burning it. So we need to phase out our production of oil and gas. We need to stop fracking, which is a term that's used for getting oil and gas out of the ground. We need to stop opening up new reserves of oil and gas in Canada and around the world. Next is we need to electrify everything. So this includes how we heat our homes, our buildings, how we cook, how we travel, our public transit. There are many things you can do to reduce your carbon footprint. That is how much carbon you actually burn in just living every day. So you can convert your natural gas heating to an electric heat pump. You can do the same thing with your water heater. You can convert your gas range to an electric induction stove. You can reduce your use of barbecues and fireplaces, and use public transit. Buy an EV if you're able to do that. Probably if you're very ambitious, you can look at installing solar panels and generating your own electricity, but that's being pretty ambitious. So the next action is actually switching banks. And the reason I mention this is there's a report that's produced by the Rainforest Action Network. It's called Banking on Climate Chaos. And what they do every year is they list all of the financial institutions that are actually funding fossil fuel production around the world. And last year, you can see some of the numbers here, and it's kind of small, but last year, the Royal Bank of Canada was the #1 fossil fuel investor in the world, even beating out banks like JP Morgan Chase and Citibank. They invested $42.1 billion last year in fossil fuels. So there is a program, not put on by my organization, but by another one called Climate Pledge Collective. And the program is called Bank Switch. And they talk about how you can look at switching your bank. So it's something that if you're serious about dealing with climate change, looking at switching your bank to one that's more climate friendly. And the next item I have here is the one that Judith will be talking more about, and that is to lobby our elected representatives at all 3 levels of government and advocate for drastic and urgent climate action to happen. So There's actually a bill before the House right now that's talking about reducing the amount of advertising of fossil fuels and fossil fuel intensive industries. It's a private member's bill, and it's actually been put forward by an NDP member of parliament. But again, Judith will be talking about advocacy with our elected representatives. Some other personal actions you can take, just reducing your use of energy, conservation, switching to LED light bulbs. You probably heard of some of these, energy efficient electric appliances. I've already mentioned reducing your usage of barbecues and fireplaces. Another big one is actually eating less dairy and meat, especially beef. As it turns out, cattle are very energy intensive, water intensive. They require feed. So that's one of the things that you can do to very easily reduce your meat and dairy consumption. Eat more vegetables, fruits, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds. And the other big one is actually wasting less food. So what happens with the food waste is that when it goes into landfill, it actually starts rotting and fermenting, and that actually produces methane, which is bad again for the environment and the greenhouse effect. So throwing away less food, practicing better food management would really be helpful. Next, again, some more, I guess, obvious things like walking and biking more, taking public transit, carpooling, flying less. Flying is very energy intensive in terms of the jet fuel that's burned and how much CO2 it produces and puts into the atmosphere. Buying fewer new clothes, just making do with what you have and buying fewer consumer goods, shopping secondhand, repairing what you can, and choosing products from companies that are doing their business sustainably and looking to cut down on their gas emissions and their waste. And the other one I wanted to mention was around investment. So make sure your savings are invested in environmentally sound, sustainable businesses and pension funds. So pension funds have been investing in fossil fuels. There's an organization called Shift Action. I've got their logo here at the very bottom. And what they produce is a report. It's actually a report card. And this is Shift Actions. Probably a little bit too small to see, but one of the more important ones is Canada Pension Plan. And they scored a C-. So if you go to the Shift Action website, I think it's shiftaction.ca, they'll tell you how you can send an email, an action letter to Canada Pension Plan to tell them to stop investing in fossil fuels. Next, if you're concerned enough, you can write a letter to the editor of your favorite newspaper. I've written several to Toronto Star and Globe and Mail, and I've had some of them published. And again, support and vote for climate-friendly candidates. And speak up, like talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, and see if you can get others involved in taking action about the climate crisis. And I guess the same thing here, talking to business owners, local and world leaders, and you can check out what we call calls to action. Calls to action are in some of the websites of environmental organizations. They'll actually create petitions, or they'll send letters to some of our elected representatives. And I think I'm getting close to the finish. Oh, stay informed. Sign up for newsletters. I've mentioned a couple here, and actually CBC has a very good one on Earth newsletter. You can subscribe to The Guardian or Canada's National Observer. I actually subscribe to both of them, and other climate-aware news media organizations. And you can actually check out my website. Lily mentioned it earlier, myclimatechange.home.blog. I actually post climate-related articles from the Toronto Star and Globe and Mail and other publications on a daily basis. And next is watch out for greenwashing. So it's defined as the act or practice of making a product, policy, activity appear to be more environmentally friendly or less environmentally damaging than it really is. And fossil fuel companies and banks are doing this a lot. So you may have seen some of the advertisements from Pathways Alliance. I think they were showing TV ads during, let's see, I think it was some of the tennis matches, FIFA World Cup, they were showing them, like this is from last year, and they're still doing that. So, and what they're trying to do is get the federal government and provincial governments to provide funding for their carbon capture. A carbon capture is a technology that's very expensive and not proven at scale. So I won't go into the details of that, but it's again, it's an example of greenwashing that they're doing. I think finally, the one other thing that you can do is just support an environmental organization. There's actually social justice organizations. Everything is interrelated. The environment and social justice, they're all related. So anything that you can do to get involved with an organization, donate, sign up for the newsletter, attend marches and rallies, different events related to the climate crisis. And there's some organizations that you can join. Climate Fast is the one that I belong to. There's other organizations for our kids, Seniors for Climate Action Now, for our grandkids. CALL is another one. I think Judith is a member of CALL. So I encourage you to get involved and support an organization. It's all, everything you can do helps. So, and I think my final, well, not quite final, but later is too late. So if we don't start doing these things now, when will we? So, and lastly, just want to make an offer that I'm wearing this button right here. I don't know if you can see it, but it says Stop Burning Fossil Fuels. So if you'd like a button, or if you'd like one of these mini posters, which are produced by the Climate Pledge Collective, just email me. I think I have my email ID in the next slide. But if you'd like a button or some of these posters, just let me know, and I can see what I can do to get them to you. So in closing, this is my email ID, and the organization I belong to is Climate Fast. Their website is climatefast.ca, and these are the two websites I mentioned. My climatechange.home.blog has articles posted daily, and the mobilizecanada.ca website actually talks about pretty much a lot of what I've described to you, and plus some other things that you can do. So that's the end of my presentation, and just want to see if there's any questions, because we said we would have a mini Q&A at the end of each presentation.
Yes.
So
Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray.
Sure.
And I'm checking with our tech support to see if there's any questions posted for Ray. I didn't see any in the Google document.
Yeah, please go ahead and put any questions you have in the chat. In the meantime, Ray, what do you think are some of the most, of all the actions you list there, what are your top 3 most impactful, if you had to pick?
Well, I think top 3, as Catherine Hayhoe said, is talk to your family and friends about the climate crisis. That it is very bad. I think one of the problems I find with Canadian media is that they don't really talk about what's happening outside of Canada very much. So places like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sudan, they're suffering from droughts, from floods. So I think just really talking to people and making yourself more knowledgeable about what's going on with the climate crisis. Second thing is electrifying. So if you have the opportunity to switch to a heat pump from natural gas heating, if you're purchasing a car, look at purchasing a hybrid or an EV. Just reducing how much fossil fuel you burn, whether it's natural gas or gasoline or oil or diesel. So, and I guess the third thing, what would I say is the third thing? Advocate. Talk to your elected representative and talk to your MP, your MPP, your city councillor about taking serious action, because the things we can do personally is great. It all helps. It all adds up, but it's going to take serious policy and legislative changes to really get us over the hump or the curve. So I think those are the 3 things that I would talk about.
I do see a question, Ray.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard that methane can be converted to fuel. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah. In fact, they've talked about using the methane gas produced from food waste and using that for, as they call it, renewable natural gas. So that is true. Yes.
But I also read somewhere that actually the damage to the environment is even worse from methane than from carbon dioxide.
It is. It is. You have to be careful. I think the number I've heard is about 60 to 80 times worse than carbon dioxide with methane. But methane, as I mentioned earlier, it'll dissipate after 8 or 10 years, whereas carbon dioxide will stay around like almost forever, basically. But methane is a lot more worse for the environment.
Yes, we should move on, okay?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Next, I'd like to introduce Paul Honest. Paul was imported from Silicon Valley in 2010 and has served on the board of the Monet Condo for 12 years as president. The Monet was enticed into joining the YCCA by its president then, and Paul has been a member of the executive committee for several years. As someone who prefers to be outside, he has seen firsthand the evidence of climate change and believes that taking action is the most important thing he can do for our future generations. Paul will talk about what some condos have done or can do to reduce the climate impact. Paul?
Thanks, Lily, and thank you, Pam, for initiating this. I'm representing the YCCA, which is the Young Corridor Condominium Association. If any of you haven't heard of us yet, you will. And we are participating in this. Judith and I attended a climate action roundtable initiated by our city councilor, Lily Cheng, last year. YCCA has involved itself in many of the initiatives around North York, because our effort is to work with establish positive relationships with all levels of government and work with them on concerns, like the 401 interchange, our local development issues, infrastructure needs and things. And now we're moving on to work on climate action. We're including that in our portfolio. So why are condos important to climate action? So condo boards function sort of like a fourth level of government. We have our federal, provincial, and municipal governments, but condo boards have control and decision-making capability over millions of dollars that affect hundreds of people often in a single condo. So we are able to act on behalf of a large number of people and to take actions that can improve things such as recycling and other ways to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. Equipment decisions and recycling efforts are some of the more common efforts, but what we really need are people who are willing to learn, lead, and talk about these efforts. So what's YCCA's involvement in this? So one of our main goals all along has been to improve not only the quality of life for condo residents, but also the efficiency of condo operations. So we share ways to save money and resources. So when our city councilor, Lily Cheng, initiated the Climate Action Roundtable stuff, that's perfect for us. We jumped right in. In the past couple of years, we've conducted a few seminars. We do several throughout the year. One was on LED conversion programs. Another one was on upgrading building motor and pump systems to make our carbon footprint less as well. Electric vehicle charging systems are all the rage now. And just improving building system efficiencies through smart building plans. Like for an individual home, you can install a smart thermostat. Well, we can do that on a much larger scale when we control the operations of a building. The recordings of these seminars will be up on our new website real soon, and we'll share those links as well. So one of the easiest ways to to decrease the hydro use, which is a way of decreasing our greenhouse gas emissions, is to convert to LEDs. It's really a no-brainer. And a lot of the condos in North York were originally built before LED lighting was available. So they were using incandescent light, which uses 3, 4, 5 times as much electricity as an LED that can produce even more light. And what condos can do is implement these in such a way that you do it in phases so that the first phase can pay for itself, and then the money you save can pay for the second phase, and the money you save there can pay for the third phase, which is what we did here at our condo. And we effectively paid nothing to convert and to decrease our hydro use by over 30%. Now, why not? You know, that's the question. So what actions can you take? If you're a board member, just do it. It's easy. Contact us at the YCCA. If you're not a member, you're welcome to join us. But we're happy to share this information and help move projects like that along. Now, if you're a resident, what can you do? Well, you can ask your board, why haven't you done this yet? You can just say, well, don't we want to save money? Don't you want to help keep our costs down? And that's a very convincing argument to a board of directors, I can tell you. The motors and pumps that we use in large buildings have come a long way in the last 20 years. A lot of our buildings are built with single pumps that run 24/7, or large fans large exhaust fans that sit in the parking garages. You might have 6, 8, 10 of these huge fans that were running all the time. Well, something we did a number of years ago was we installed a sensor system so that the fans in the parking garage only come on when any sort of carbon monoxide or nitrous oxide is detected. So they come on as necessary, but they're also programmed to run for 20 minutes in the morning around the time that people are leaving for work to keep the air fresh. And then in the evening, about the time that people are coming home from work in their vehicles as well. Now that had another effect. You know, just because the fans aren't running all the time, they're not sucking a lot of cold air in, so the garage stays warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer, and further reducing the cost of heating and cooling the building, making it more comfortable there. So, you know, there's other effects from performing these. Another thing that we did was replace the single water pump, the main pump for the building, with a system that uses 3 pumps. And these 3 pumps are they're programmable, and they're capable of making up for the difference in water pressure that the city provides. The city used to guarantee or provide much higher water pressure. But in our area, especially as more development has come in, the water pressure to the area has decreased. And some buildings have had to replace the pump because they couldn't keep up. But another advantage of having a system like this is you have automatic redundancy. The system can function with 1 pump if necessary, but it typically will run 2 for regular operations, spin up the 3rd one, and when that's up to speed, spin the first one down so that the pumps get a chance to rest. They last longer, they can provide a lot more pumping capability, and they run at 30% less electricity than those large pumps do. So win, win, win. So what actions can we take? If you're a board member, it's very easy to do. There are many consultants out there, and all of them are replacing pumps like this now. And again, if you're a resident, ask your board, do you do this? And if not, why not? Another very popular thing now is electric vehicle support in condos. People that have been buying electric vehicles have often been charging at work or going to public charging stations. But it's becoming more and more common in new condos that when you order your condominium, you can check a box that says you want charging for your vehicle, your parking spot. And buildings can do that. Although the number of electric vehicles that were being sold decreased a little bit for a while after the incentives, the provincial incentives were dropped, we are ramping back up and EVs are becoming more popular. And study after study shows that electric vehicle supporting condos is one of the key factors that people who have vehicles are looking for now. It raises the property value to have the capability in your building, and it attracts, tends to attract the higher level of resident that make for a more resilient community. People who are buying electric vehicles are interested in the welfare of them, not only themselves saving money on gas and stuff, but also many are buying it because of environmental considerations and climate concerns. We at the YCCA, we conducted a two-part seminar on both the legal and technical issues related to EVs. And the second session, the follow-up session, was where we heard from different directors in the North York area who had already completed such a project and shared the positive and negative lessons that they learned when they performed all that. If a resident hasn't asked yet, they will soon. So talk to your boards, get them ready to go. I made a short list of who can do what. And it's what level does this operate at? It's probably a little small, a little hard to see out there. But basically, things can be done for the condo, but they can be initiated by either the board of directors or individuals. So things like converting to LED illumination has to be done by the board, but it can be encouraged and driven by the residents who live there. If you want it, talk to them. We had a seminar called How Smart is Your Building? There are lots of things that can be done to improve the energy efficiency of buildings. Replacing the pumps, which we talked about, plumbing programs to eliminate leaks. Toilets that are running all the time use a great deal of water, and pumping all that water up into the building takes a lot of energy as well. Something that individuals can do is set up as part of a recycling program, is to set up a reuse area where instead of things going into landfill, they go on reuse shelves. And then people are using products that are still good instead of going out and buying a new one and entailing that additional environmental cost. As Ray said before, one of the things that's most damaging to the environment is methane. And an organics recycling program in a condo can divert all of that waste from the landfill, where it's going to produce methane, into a recycle program that develops compost for the city and is used, so that the amount of methane that's produced is negligible compared to what happens if it goes into a landfill. It's very easy to set up. You just need some green bins, and the board can authorize it, but anybody can encourage them to do so. When we started, we were getting 50, 100 pounds a week, and now it's much higher. The bins are typically full. And one other factor is that anything that doesn't go into the garbage bins in a condo, you don't have to pay for. So if it goes into recycling or to the organics bin, you don't have to pay for it. So you can your condo can save money there as well. Here's a program example of our Smart Building Seminar, where we heard from City of Toronto representatives about programs, services, and the incentives offered in the areas of energy, water, waste, safety, operations, and community. And I want to stress community because there are things that individuals can do in a community. They can, in condos, you can share on bulletin boards. You can start groups such as sharing vegetarian recipes. One thing that a local garden, the Parkview Neighborhood Garden, will be doing is sharing recipes about how to use vegetables and how to prepare vegetables to make it more attractive and easier for people to say, oh, what's bitter melon? It looks kind of strange. Maybe if I had a recipe for it, I'd be more likely to try it. So cutting down on meat, red meats especially, will also decrease our carbon footprint. And lastly, if your condo's not a member of the YCCA, you could ask them to join, but more important, ask them to implement some of these changes. And if they join the YCCA, they can benefit from the wealth of experience that many of our members have had in these different areas. As an individual, you can set an example by recycling, initiating an organics program in your building if you don't already have one. And another thing that you can do is join the city's 3 R's ambassadors, which originally stood for recycle, reuse, and reduce. But now we have repurpose and refuse. When you go to a restaurant, you don't have to take the plasticware and everything that they offer if you're taking it home. Every little bit helps. And as Ray said, it's a long journey. And those long journeys begin with a single step. So I'm going to ask you, what single step are you going to take to affect climate change tomorrow? Thanks.
Thank you, Paul, for sharing some very practical information. And I do see a few questions. The first one in the chat box is, can these recommendations be eventually suggested as part of new condo development standards?
Yes. This is something that's being fed back in. We are sharing this information with others. But where it has to go is it has to go to developers. Developers have to see that people are buying condos that have these energy saving features. So the market will help drive that. Yes, I can see the questions. Shall I just go ahead and read them?
Please do, Paul.
Okay, so next question is it possible to switch condo heating to heat pumps if it's not done already? And the answer to that is yes. On one of our follow-up seminars, there's somebody who's an expert in heat pumps for buildings like this and converting that I want to participate in our second talk on climate action. Another one that will be participating in that will have to do with the recycling and organics programs that are done in other buildings to help. But the bottom line is that all buildings have to develop a strategy for replacement of their components as they go. There's something called a reserve fund study that's done, and that determines the funding that has to be maintained for these items. Heat pumps can provide greater efficiency, lower energy costs, and save residents money, and that's always a great selling feature. So next question is, do condos have compost collection already? So instead of compost collection, it's called organics. So all of the food waste, we have a bin that sits on the counter. Ours is a metal one that's just about this big. And downstairs where our recycling is, when we take that downstairs, we take the bag, drop it in there, and it goes into the city. And when we were working in the Parkview Neighborhood Garden last several years, one of the things we do at the end of each year is we go to the collection sites where they provide the compost that's already been processed, and we take it back to the garden. So some of the scraps from our condos in the neighborhood might be growing some of the vegetables here in our Parkview Neighborhood Garden this year. Next question is, how much capacity is there in a condo from an electrical systems perspective to add EVs? Sorry. So that varies quite a bit. If your condo was built before, say, 2005, then you were, let's say 2010, the likelihood is that you don't have LED lighting in the building, and it probably has older pumps because they were cheaper to use back then. Developers are trying to make money, so they're not using the latest and greatest. So what we found when we did an audit is that because we switched to LEDs, we find that it decreased the use of our electrical capacity. Each building has an electrical capacity. And when you're not using it for illumination, you could use it for other things like the EV charging systems. And we found that just that one change gave us the additional capacity to install 61 full charge systems. Now, that's 61 full charge systems, but the EV charging systems now are much more intelligent, and they can adjust the rate of charge to different vehicles. So you can get 2 or 3 times the number of vehicles charging at a slower rate by these intelligent programs. Next question is that the city of Toronto has a program called Better Building Partnership that focuses on multi-residential buildings. That's just a comment from Jane. Thank you, Jane. And it just suggests check them out. I think that it applies more to the more traditional buildings, the older buildings, but there are other new programs. And the last question, because I'm taking up more time than we planned, is from Sejan. And he said that we switched to LED lighting a while ago, and 2 benefits that they saw were, 1, that LEDs produced less heat, that reduced the demand on cooling in the summer. Probably increases demand on heating in the winter, but probably not so much. And then the second one is that LED bulbs last longer, so they're not replacing them as often. That saves the cost on bulbs. It saves the time of the superintendent that's running around, gives him time to do other things like dealing with all the organics that he has to pick up. So that's all the questions for me now.
Yes, I do see another question from George, but George, please let me hold that for the final panel discussion, all right? So now, thank you, Paul. And now our last evening is Judith Lawrence, who is a resident at Upper Medicine. A retired teacher and psychotherapist, Judith has been educating herself about our climate emergency by joining Climate Fast and Climate Action for Lifelong Learners. As an elder, she is very concerned about the future for our future generations. Judith will talk about her experiences in advocacy. Judith?
Thank you very much, Lily. Now, you've got a lot of information coming to you, and sometimes it feels a bit too much. So I decided that I'm just going to tell you my journey to be an advocate. And I think there's the first slide, and let me just say that you know, I've always been involved in environmental things, and I've loved to be in nature. But I really felt helpless when I saw the global warming happening and not knowing where to turn. And I thought, God, the world's going to hell in a handbasket as far as climate is concerned. And so I just sort of went along my way. And then COVID came along. And with COVID, I decided I'm going to start learning about this whole climate crisis. And I don't know what the next slide is. You want to put that next slide on? Okay. So, and I can't read it, so you'll have to just read it to yourself. As it turns out, when COVID came along, I decided to use the isolation. And well, there were so many webinars, there were so many videos, and so many books, I just got overwhelmed. And luckily, I found these 2 groups that were mentioned before, Climate Fast, which is a group of activists that have been going for about 10 years or so, and also a new group called PAL, Climate Action for Lifelong Learners, and that was a group of seniors from the Life Institute from Ryerson who joined a club, and it's continued on today. And it's more about research and educating themselves. And so those have been really helpful supports for me. because it does get too much sometimes. Well, first of all, and where's advocacy in this? Well, one of the biggest things that happened was I was encouraged right away to write letters and to visit politicians and to make sure I had my facts in order. And that was good because we have to do that. It's the next step. However, how do you go about it? Well, there are actually organizations that can help you with that, such as Citizens Climate Lobby. That was a big name. And that's actually an international group. And just, it shows you how to write letters and how to follow through with meeting representatives from the 3 levels of government. I think you could put the next slide on, because if we want to get things done, we have to make that concerted effort to let our politicians know what we want. And so I was stymied because I'm visually impaired, I'm an elder, and I am technically challenged. And so everything is a big learning curve. So what could I do? Well, I decided I could show up. And so that's what I have done. I have shown up for those webinars and those seminars and those workshops. And I have actually happily, when Councillor Lily Chang invited people to volunteer at the library for climate roundtable, I said yes, and I showed up. And she had lots of people there that were interested in Willowdale, people who were interested in just doing things for the climate action. And one of the things was an eco fair and tree planting. And people came from all different climate action groups. Sadly, the eco fair was rained out, but it was on Environment Day, and Lily is planning to have another one coming up. So look for it. Now, the other thing I did was I learned how to depute. I love that word, new word for me. Make a deputation to City Hall. Boy, did I feel important for about 2 minutes anyway. I had to look at the budget and say, okay, how is that affecting our whole climate action? And there's a very important capital budget part that's called Transform TO. It's a broad initiative. And so twice I went to City Hall in budget time and spoke to the budget committee to say, this is important, please keep it in the budget, etc. And I learned how to do that by taking workshops and seminars with Climate Fast, and that worked out well for me. And so it's not, it's not the end of the world if I can't write letters. And right now, of course, I've got all kinds of assisted devices that are helping me, if only I can get them to work, and coordinates. So don't let things stop you from learning, because that is, again, one of the things about being an elder. It's the continuing of learning, and because our children, our grandchildren, we want them to have a livable future. We need to do things now. Now, 10 years ago, I heard David Suzuki speak to an audience, and he pleaded with them to talk to your levels of government to reduce carbon emissions. He said, all the individual work you can do is great, but nothing is going to really happen until we get politicians on side to vote for positive action and to be doing it positively, quickly, and decisively. Therefore, you know, it's really an important thing to do, to get involved on that level, on the level of working with politicians and talking to them. And so that's what I continue to do. I continue to speak, I continue to learn, and I'm encouraging you to do the same. So one of the first steps you might want to take, and I think it's the last slide, there is something going on at the Science Center, and it's the called Climate Quest. It goes till April 9th, and it's an interactive exhibition, and it might be a kind of first step or whatever to see what how it fits for you. You might want to take your children or grandchildren. I have not been to it, and I don't even know if it's greenwashing, but I certainly hope not. And so that's my stuff. Okay.
Thank you, Judith, for being so persistent and for showing up for climate action. I don't see any specific questions for Judith. Okay, there is one. Okay, how have you maintained your motivation?
Well, you know, I guess that's another thing I forgot to say, was about believing in solutions. Now, you know, you can read all the doom and gloom, and it's there, but I believe there are solutions, and I think I keep on believing, you know, that somehow my actions and with everyone else will make a difference. So, and I've met some wonderful people. I've actually gone on rallies and marches, and my God, at 80 years old, I'm pretty proud of myself to do that. So, you know, doesn't mean like motivation just keeps coming.
Yes, Judith. And I do have a personal comment to add that I recently read somewhere that before the climate issue or crisis have always been presented as doom and gloom. But now we should actually take a more positive outlook, because the science have proven that there are solutions, and actually economical too, because some of the newer technologies do save money and provide new jobs for people, right? Now that there's no more specific questions for Judith, I'd like to bring back Ray and Paul for panel discussions. Or even comments. But first, let's do respond to George's question for Paul. He said they're trying to get our condo board to install EV chargers, but they are not interested. What can I do to push this type of project forward?
Right.
Any suggestion?
Yes. Thanks for the question, George. I did a lot of research around this when we prepared our presentation, our seminar for the YCCA. And that seminar will be online. But the requirements, as far as condos concerned, are really broken up into 3 sections. I put a link in the group chat. Everybody should be able to see that. And this goes to the Condo Authority of Ontario website, specifically on the section on EV systems. So there's an approval process. There are rules, and there are a lot of considerations that go around this. So, in a nutshell, it's not required for that the owners have a 51% or majority vote to approve such a thing. That's if the cost of installation is less than 10% of the annual budget. So typically budgets are much higher than the entry-level cost for charging systems. Some of these charging systems the basic system can be installed for $20,000 to $30,000 for a 10-unit system. Sorry. The link that I put is the website. I can't see what the monitor's trying to send me. Small systems can be installed, and they are modular now, where you can get like 10 units or 20 unit blocks or chunks that will be installed. The limit on those is based on how much power you have, but the approval process is the other side of this. And this site does a very good job at explaining those, the legal steps, the preparation. But once you ask a condo board, if say you want to install a charger in your system, they have 60 days to respond to you in writing. And if they just say there's no policy, well, they're required to have a policy. So I don't want to go into too much detail on this right here, but look over that, and happy to talk about this more further. And when we send out all the links and the connections for this, we'll include that seminar. So there's a lot more to learn there.
Could I speak a bit?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. My name is Randy Crisp. I live at 131 Beecroft Road, 2101. I just want to thank Judith Lawrence so much for her presentation. I taught for 50 years high school in North York, TDSP. And when I taught biology, I was department head. I'm just so Judith, your presentation just made me cry. I taught biology and science and chemistry for a little over 52 years at TDSB, at George Henry. It was my first school. Anyway, Don Wilson Shepherd, George Bandy, Collegiate. And I just want to say, I really appreciate everything you're doing at your age. You have inspired me as an aging person to fight for climate change. And I taught climate change in my grade 9 curriculum when it came in about 3 years ago. I retired only a couple of years ago. And then in grade 10 when it came in, I taught to the best of my ability. I had my grade 12 students emotional, doing incredible ISU, the culinary projects on climate change. And these kids were from all over the world, okay? George Vandy Secondary School is a school that accepts kids. It's an inner city school that accepts kids from all over the world. And they come in from a lot of countries where climate change is really happening, okay? It's not just climate change, it's a lot of things that are going on in the global community, as we know. So these kids have experienced kids with environmental problems and animal populations and biodiversity problems, and of course, very humane, horrible things. But basically, the kids I taught really were into environmental change. They're all immigrants to Canada. They really wanted to look at global change in terms of climate. And I tried to teach about what's happening to rising rivers and cities going underwater. Sorry, stupid, emotional.
Well, thank you, Randy, for your comments. Yes, we all need to contribute, old and young, right? Don't see ourselves as too old to do anything. We should all chip in our bits, right? But thank you so much for your heartfelt comments.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yes.
Yeah. If I can help to in retirement, I really would like to, Lily. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, a little emotional. It's just something that is a keynote thing for me. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments in general? You're welcome.
I see a hand.
I think that was me. And I just wanted to build on what was just said, which is if we can enlist kids, the kids know, and they know it's their future, and they want to get involved. And in your buildings, if you can get the kids involved on campaigns and things like that, that would, I think that would also bounce back to the parents and the grandparents as well. So I just want to support that. Also wanted to make a comment on something else that condos could do, and that is the landscaping, the grounds. A number of our buildings around here have extensive grounds. And if we move away from annuals to perennials that use less water, that's a saving for the condo and better for the environment. So I just wanted to throw that in there too. Some small thing, but every small thing helps.
We started doing that last year at our condo. We had, it's nice to have a lot of flowers and stuff, but when we switched over to perennials, it has a more consistent look, and it definitely we were able to cut down on the amount of water used tremendously. They just have to be established for a year or two, and then can practically turn your watering system off.
Ray, your hands up?
Yes, I just wanted to comment on what the last speaker said, but there's an organization called Fridays for Future Toronto, which was inspired by Greta Thunberg. And we've actually worked with them on a number of marches and rallies. But if you know young people or have young people that are students and would like to get involved in climate action, I think that would be a very good organization. If you just Google Fridays for Future Toronto, you'll probably get their website. So I just want to make that comment. Thanks.
Thanks.
I also see a question for Paul. What is one of the most impactful and cost-effective action a condo can take on its own? It's a big question, Paul.
Yes, most impactful. Well, like everyone said before, talking about things, getting the conversation started is important. Doing LED conversions is very easy. It's impactful. It can start conversations. It was one of the first steps that we were able to take, and it got this movement rolling. So that has an impact to get things going. But there's so many things, and it all adds up. You can't say just one thing is most impactful. Changing the pumps made a big difference. We resealed our building so that the building is more weather tight. That saves on heating and cooling as well. When we do our renovations of the building, that's one of the factors that will be included. The materials that are used. We've discussed this with the designer already, that we want to use materials that are going to reduce that and not use exotic materials or things that are energy expensive to produce or to use. So no one answer to that impactful question, but it all adds up.
Yes. Any more questions or comments?
I had one for Ray. We're talking about decreasing our use, production of carbon dioxide. Well, I just produced carbon dioxide. So I heard somebody say, well, if I wasn't breathing so much, if I wasn't exercising so much, I wouldn't produce as much carbon dioxide. And I said, well, you have a point, but if you look at it in that little tiny box, that makes sense. But by exercising more, by walking to places, that's one way you're going to produce more carbon dioxide yourself, but there's other effects as well. You're going to have the benefits on your health. You're going to be setting a good example. And when you're not driving places, if you take that time and walk, you're not harried and hassled in traffic. You're relaxing. You can take the scenic route and more relaxed. So the question is, should I breathe less or should I breathe more?
Okay, so there's a couple of things there, but certainly instead of driving a car, if you can walk to your destination, like you say, there's health benefits related to that, and you're actually producing less carbon by walking as opposed to driving. But I think one of the sadder things that I've heard because of what impact the climate crisis is having, like couples, newly married couples are deciding not to have children because of the climate crisis. And that's how some married couples are looking at it, that if I have children, are they going to be able to survive in the world? And I find that to be a very, very sad thing to hear, that couples are deciding not to have kids because of the climate crisis. So I'm hoping that whatever we can do, that we can turn things around, turn our situation around, and give people hope that yes, I can have children, I can have a livable world by what I'm doing, and I'm hoping that can happen. So thanks for the question, Paul.
Yeah, I do see one more question, so let's entertain that as the last question, okay? Can you see that too, Paul? From your friend. I was wondering how other buildings deal with hazardous waste, such as e-waste, paint, etc. I've been pushing for 1 to 2 hazardous waste days where residents can drop off such items and we can dispose of it. There have been challenges with this, and I was wondering if other buildings were dealing with this.
Yes. To make a long story as short as possible, when I came to Toronto, I came to our building and we didn't have much of a recycling program. So I went to the board of directors. I moved here from California, where you recycle everything. You recycle shoestrings, everything. And I said, why don't we have this and that? And they said, well, that's a good idea. Why don't you do that? So I went and attended the city's 3 R's ambassador program, became an ambassador, implemented things here. And that's how I ended up on the board. So I'll warn you, it can lead to more serious involvement in things. But one of the things that we do is we have a hazardous waste collection bin. It's a sealed bin for things, like any spray bottles, anything that still has propellant in it. Empty ones can go into recycling, but anything that still has stuff in it can go into hazardous waste. Paints, any materials that are questionable at all can go into that hazardous waste. And they have a limit on how much they'll collect, but all you have to do is have a collection place, call 311, and they'll come and pick it up. We probably do that every 2 or 3 months now. To begin at the beginning, it wasn't that much, but after about 2 years, it got to be more. And the thing that I think helped the most is that when people come to our condo, the last page of the registration papers, the packet that they get, is an offer to conduct a tour of the building. And one of the things that we do is we take people to the recycle room and show them, where things are. And they go, oh, wow, we didn't have that at my old building. That's a great idea. So just the awareness and knowledge of that is very helpful. But a lot of condos have a fair amount of turnover. So it's really important to get to people when they start, so they develop that habit from the beginning, and to have periodic info sessions, like in the lobby or somewhere, to reinforce that behavior. Setting a good example is fine, but having these building-wide reminders periodically can go a long way. So hazardous waste is one of those.
Yeah, I do see that comments from other participants that there are several buildings have boxes or shelves to collect hazardous waste. We do in that. It's true. We do have a box for batteries, and we have a box in one of our basement to recycle electronic stuff. All right. So there are things being done. Okay. We have up enough time, so I'd like to thank everyone for your participation. And to finish off, I'd like to invite my fellow resident, Pam Churchill, to say a few words to thank all our speakers. Pam?
Well, I'm absolutely delighted to have this opportunity to make some closing remarks and to say some thank yous. I first of all want to thank those who joined us this evening, because an audience makes for a successful event, and this audience has really been special. We hope you will join us for more YCCA events, and particularly events on the environment. There are many people who are responsible for this presentation that you have enjoyed this evening. And I'm first going to thank Paul, because Paul is the one who started it all. Despite the fact that he is a very busy man, and you can clearly see that, he is so committed to climate action that he was quick to join the climate table in Willowdale. And there he met Judith, who is equally committed to climate action. And then all kinds of good things started to happen. Among them, I introduced Judith to Lily in our building. Lily is a member of our speaker series group. And Lily and Judith approached Paul with an idea for helping to organize an event on climate and climate action. And Paul was very quick to accept the offer, and he has shepherded us through this process, through all the learning and all the little lumps and bumps along the way. It was Judith who found Ray, and what a treasure Ray is. You have seen all kinds of evidence about his knowledge of climate science and his commitment to action. But what you haven't seen is all the work he did behind the scenes. He made sure that we paid attention to every detail, because that's the kind of thing that makes a successful presentation. We couldn't have done this one without you, Ray. We thank you, and because of you, we're almost ready for prime time. And Ray is so widely known and respected in climate circles that when he reached out to get some technical help to be with us this evening, Ariel and Mark were just so quick to say yes, they would be here. So that again is a wonderful thing that has been part of a very successful evening. So Paul, Ray, Judith, Lily, Ariel, and Mark, thank you. We are grateful to all of you.